Let's talk about Russia. Let's talk about Novichok. Some extraordinary revelations that we've had this week about the suspects involved in that nerve agent attack on Salisbury back in March. Of course, also caused the loss of life of a British woman, Dawn Sturgis, back in July as well. Now, yesterday the British called an emergency meeting of the Security Council. So basically had to sit alongside, face to face, with the Russian ambassador to the UN, who was basically pouring cold water on all of Britain's claims that the Russians were responsible. The Prime Minister, the Security Services here, and our ambassador in the UN made it clear that we believe it is an officer or two officers of the GRU, Security Services of the Russian state, that were responsible for that Novichok attack and aimed at Sergei Skripal, of course, a former GRU officer himself before he was caught out for spying. Now, the trouble is that the Russians are constantly saying it wasn't them, this is all a big smear on them, and yet the rest of the world are convinced that it was. Made clear statements, the Americans, Canadians, French, Germans and Brits, that it was the Russians. But what happens now, and what is Vladimir Putin's endgame? Well, let's put all of this to Sir Andrew Wood. He's the former British ambassador to Russia and Associate Fellow at Chatham House. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Let's go first to what the end game is for Vladimir Putin. Now, there's a cartoon on the front page of the Matt cartoon on the front page of the Telegraph, which perhaps might come some way to explain. You get two gentlemen sitting in their club chatting, and one of them's got a front page of the paper with Trump rage on it, and one's saying, "I'll say one thing for Putin: he doesn't have a problem with staff writing critical articles about him." Is this whole thing just fundamentally about Vladimir Putin flexing his muscles, not just to the Russian people, but also to the world?
Well, I think it's a bit more than that, in the sense that Vladimir Putin genuinely believes that the world is against him, the West in particular, and the United States as a key element in that. So I think it is a real belief. When the Russian ambassador talked about anti-Russian hysteria, he should really have been talking about Putinesque hysteria, about the situation in the world outside. And Putin does everything he can possibly can to deserve people's distrust.
Well, this is it. I mean, but you're convinced, having been an ambassador for many years to Russia, that Vladimir Putin actually believed this. This isn't just something that he stirs up to sort of this Mother Russia idea, and we're all under attack, and we have to. I'm the man who's going to save you from these horrible countries that want to do us wrong. You think Vladimir Putin actually believes this?
Yes, he does believe quite a lot of that. He also stirs it up because it is in his interests. It's a bit like asking whether President Maduro of Venezuela believes all the guff that he speaks. I'm sure that he does. And you can get yourself in a position where you have no alternative. Plus, the Kremlin is a very tight place. When you go into it, you're aware of being in a different sort of world. Putin's been there for 18 years. Nobody could remain entirely normal, in my view, after having such a exposure to office.
There's a reason why most countries have term limits on their presidents. Yes,
I think it's a very good reason, and they've got term limits on the presidency in Russia, except for what he did was appoint a puppet in his place and then come back again.
Yeah, he's got around it
longer.
Well, but this is the thing. When, if as you know, our security services and our government have been explaining to us this week, there was a Kremlin instruction, possibly from Vladimir Putin himself, to these GRU officers to go and attempt to murder a former Russian officer in the GRU, Sergei Skripal, and obviously there were a lot of fallout from that. His daughter Julia, a police officer, two other Brits also injured, or one Brit died. He must have known that these two men, travelling on public transport, identifiable via CCTV cameras, the use of a particular nerve agent that would be linked to Russia. He must have known that eventually there would be enough evidence that the finger would be pointed at the Kremlin. Do you think he sort of wanted the finger to be pointed at the Kremlin?
No, I mean, there's no way that you can tell whether he personally ordered rather than gave a general authorization to this operation. He wouldn't have been consulted about the details. And you can get yourself in a position like my former good friend Milosevic did in Yugoslavia, where things are done in your name that you approve of, but you're never going to sign a piece of paper or anything like that. So he's given blanket authorization. There's no doubt at all that he personally is overall responsible. But we will never prove, and I think it would be rather surprising if given a direct order in this particular case.
Although he has gone on national television in Russia and quite openly stated, he would like to kill those who have done ill to the Russian country, and he would certainly include the likes of officers, former officers in the JRU, like Sergei Skripal. I mean, he basically said he'd like to kill him and he would kill him, and then he was killed, and then people are pointing the finger, and then everyone's saying, "How outrageous that you could point the finger at the man who said he would kill him." I mean, it is laughable, isn't it?
It is laughable, and it should be a joke that they suggested that we should have included them in the investigation, when the finger pointed pretty clearly at the Russians, the origin of the poison and so on and so forth. That we should then go into sort of joint investigation to which they would be party and therefore accept the results. That wouldn't have happened. Didn't happen with Litvinenko.
Yeah.
He's the person that sent troops into Ukraine. They never did it, and so on and so forth. His record of lying is stunningly brazen.
Well, it is very brazen, but perhaps it's not so brazen when you look at the context in which he continues to act in this way and to lie in this way, and he doesn't actually have to face the consequences of it. Do you think that it's actually quite cunning, this way of, whether it comes to the takeover of Crimea and elsewhere, that actually this cunning way of keeping just below a level of aggression that would require action by military action of some sort by NATO? We've seen, of course, economic sanctions. We've seen diplomats being expelled and the like, but none of this seems to have an effect on Vladimir Putin. None of this seems to deter him. What action could we take? I mean, GCHQ's boss has been making a speech saying that they want to actually take revenge for this. But what action can be taken that would actually deter Vladimir Putin from encroaching on British territory again?
Well, I'm not myself particularly convinced there is any action which would do that. That doesn't mean to say we should not expose what he's done, and that will actually, within Russia itself as well as outside it, increase the question marks about the rule that he's established, which is highly damaging to Russia itself. So there is a point in hauling him before a tribunal like the Security Council, and I think that the message that came out of that, at least from the Western partners, was pretty clear, admirably clear, in fact.
And would say tackling all the Russian billionaires, property owners, all the people with all their money in London. We know this has become a basically sort of Moscow Mark II, effectively, the amount of Russian billionaires who've come to the country as a safe haven. Would, if we made life difficult for them, would that put enough pressure on Vladimir Putin?
Well, that is being done. I think it's a mistake to call all Russians with money wicked or
no, exactly.
Putin. You need to find out those who are directly linked to Putin. And I think that's what we're trying to do, or we have tried to do, and the Americans have done very effectively. So that has had an effect on the atmosphere around Putin, at least in Russia. But the difficulty is a man like that in a position like that, people are not going to go to him with objective advice and recommendations. They're going to go on and say something that he would like to hear. So it's a bit circular in that way.
Yeah, we are in
anyone in a position of power gets there, but few after such a long time, and with actually quite a trail of guilt behind him in terms of violence.